Do you know Dominik Tarczyński?
No.
From Poland?
Oh, yes, the former MEP.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you have an opinion on him?
I mean, I think he is someone who is doing what his voters in Poland wants, which is to make sure that you don't get mass immigration from countries that are culturally incompatible.
I can't believe the stats with him. The lowest rape, lowest crime, lowest unemployment, and the lowest number of Muslims living in his country, in Poland. You once said
when Kathy Newman interviewed him,
that was the best.
She was
not even one.
She was attacking him as though he would be ashamed of it, and he said, "No,
this is what I stand for." Yeah. So you've said in the past before. You can correct me on this. Islam is not compatible. Your words. Islam is not compatible with the way of living of the West. What did you mean by that?
There was a man called Syed Qutb who lived in Egypt in the early to mid-20th century. And he was the father of what you might call Islamism. Now, Islamism is different from Islam. Islamism is the political ideology of Islamic extremism. And he wrote a book called Milestones, which tries to explain why the Muslim world hasn't been as successful as the Western world. And it's basically a sort of it's like the Communist Manifesto. Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto is to communism. It puts forward a very simplistic explanation for the the relative failure of the Muslim world, and it led rise to political Islamism, the Muslim Brotherhood, and variants of that have we now know today as political extremism. I think Islamism, and it's a key distinction to make, Islamism is not compatible with Western values. It's rather like liberation theology in 1960s South America. It is a superficially plausible explanation that is in fact deeply flawed and dangerous. But this ideology of Islamism is not compatible with living in the West. And I think if one of the great questions for countries like Britain, where there are now 4 million Muslims, is what percentage of the Muslim population in Britain is able to embrace liberal democratic values as believers of their faith, but who are nonetheless citizens of a Western democracy, and what percentage of that population is committed to Islamism, which is not compatible.
Can you be specific? What do you mean by Islamism is not compatible? Specific, like because of this, because of that, because what are the specifics?
I mean, there was a survey done about 10 years ago showing that 36% of...
This one right here? A poll more than 1,000 British Muslims conducted by Policy Exchange think tank found that 36% of Muslims ages 16 to 24 believe those who convert to another faith should be punished by death. Apostate, I think, is what they call it.
Apostasy is the idea that if you leave your faith, whatever that faith is, it's somehow a crime to abandon that faith. Now, I would argue that if you live in the West, you live under religious freedom. That means you're free to pursue your religion, but it also means that you're free to renounce your religion. You could be an atheist who renounces their atheism. You could be a Catholic who renounces Catholicism. You could be a Jew or a Muslim who renounces your faith. No one should wish you any ill for doing so. Religious freedom means you're free to renounce your faith. If you've got in a country like the UK, over a third of young Muslims, and presumably they're now middle-aged Muslims because that survey was quite old, if you've got a sizable chunk of the population who adhere to this Islamist belief that people who abandon their faith should be killed, you have a problem. If you have a sizable chunk of the Muslim population in Britain thinking that people who are gay should be punished and that homosexuality should be outlawed, I think you've got a problem. These are things that we can't skate over. We have to address them. And if we believe in liberal democracy and freedom, we need to bring this conversation out and have it in the open. We cannot have a sizable chunk of the British population thinking that people who abandon their faith should be murdered.
What else? What else is not compatible? So that's one, apostate, which, by the way, if you want to pull up the data, and I kind of look at it when you go to apostate, it varies percentage-wise depending on what country. Rob, I just sent you a picture. I think Afghanistan is 78%, which is the highest one if you leave. And by the way, you can Google if you want to, Rob, and this is what I Googled, and it'll come up. But I sent you the picture. If you search the following, the search is what percentage of Muslims believe in apostate. Yeah, that's it right there. If you can zoom in a little bit. Death penalty for leaving Islam, right? Amongst Muslims who say Sharia law should be law of the land, percentage who favored the death penalty for converts. Can you zoom in a little bit more, Rob? Okay, Bosnia, 15%, Russia, 15%, Kosovo, 11%, Albania, 8%, Tajikistan, 22%, Turkey, 17%, Kazakhstan, 4%, Kyrgyzstan, 14%, Malaysia, 62%, Thailand, 27%, Indonesia, 18%, Afghanistan, 79%, Pakistan, 76%, Bangladesh, 44%, Egypt, 86%, Jordan, 82%, Palestinian territory, 66%, Lebanon, 46%, Iraq, 42%, Tunisia, 29%.
I think I'm right in saying that that shows the number who want to make Sharia law the official law.
Can you go up to see it? Among Muslims who say Sharia law should be the law of the land.
It's amongst those who think that Sharia should be the law of the land.
Yes.
The percentage who favor the death penalty.
Yes.
Which is not quite the same as what I was talking about.
The 36%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, remember earlier when I asked you and I said, what percentage of Muslims coming from what country are a net positive to society for you to be able to decipher and say, hey, because I ran an insurance company and we had, I'd never worked with a Scientologist before. One day we recruit a Scientologist in our office. Guy comes on board. I'm like, all right, let me see what it is to work with these guys. Some of the hardest working people in the world were Scientologists.
Sure.
They were disciplined. Sure. They worked hard. Some of them came from the Q organization. I think it's called the C organization, something like that. And there's some horror stories. I interviewed some of the guys that had some bad things to say about Scientology. But my experience working with them, a couple of the guys were from the Sea Org, right? This is where if you worked here, these guys work 20-hour days in many cases.
Sure. I mean, it's very easy to find someone from, a background who is a good worker. I mean, there are...
That's not what my point isn't that, though. My point was, so I work with Scientologists. My impression, forget about L. Ron Hubbard, conspiracy, all this other stuff that people, how much money you have to give to them. Oh, David Miscavige's wife is missing and Leah Remini. I know all that stuff. I've followed all that stuff. But they were great to work with. Mormons. You can go and make a case about God makers this and Mormons this and Joseph Moroni this. Sure,
but I don't think many Mormons in Britain are currently in the process of bombing and...
Maybe you're not getting my question. This is what I'm doing. So it's my fault. Let me unpack it for you. Within the sect of Christianity, you can have Catholics, Presbyterian, non-denominational, you can have Mormon, Jehovah, Seventh-day. You can really break it down, right? And you can even break it down to see who makes the most money, who's the best net positive to society, which marriages worked out, who has the most kids. You can break that down, okay? I can also do that from Asia, Japan, Buddhism. I can do Indian in America. They do very well. There's the highest earning immigrants in America are Indian descent. They make more money than Americans do by a mile. It's not even close. So then I can unpack Muslims. In the company I ran, at this point, we've licensed 60,000 insurance agents. We recruit a lot of Muslims. Mm-hmm. And some of them I would admit, I'm like, freaking love working with you. You're a breath of fresh air. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was, is there a way to decipher who produces the most peaceful ones that if they come to you, they integrate, they're proud to be Americans, they're proud to be Brits, they're proud to be part of your society or organization, to give you the respect, but say, look, at the same time, I'm a Muslim.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the majority of British Muslims, and Britain has gone from having 1.5 million Muslims in 2001 to 4 million today. The majority of British Muslims sign up to exactly what you and I would, I think, subscribe to. Mm-hmm. But it's having a sizable minority. Western countries, I think, need to exactly have this conversation. How do you differentiate? What are the markers?
It's data. You just need data, right?
Well, I think one of the key litmus tests is this question of apostasy. If you fundamentally believe that people who abandon their faith should be murdered, then you're probably not going to become a fully integrated member of Western society.
And if I'm not mistaken, you said once, those who live in a Western country who believe in Sharia law should be revoke their citizenship. Mm-hmm. I think you said this,
right?
You
need to be prepared to do that, yes.
You need to be prepared to do that. Okay. Who has tested that? Who has tried that out? And how do you filter that out? I mean, a person could lie to you, right? And like, I don't support it. But of course I do, behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. And then, hey, let's keep having more kids and let's take over politics. Look what's going on with the mayor of London. Look what's going on with many politicians in UK. Even in this, in US is also happening as well. So we can say, nah, not really. And then later on, yeah, I believe that. I changed my mind. What are you going to do about it now? It's too late, right? One could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think I'm right in saying that Germany and Sweden have recently begun to deport some migrants from some countries.
Really?
Yeah. And I think I'm right in saying, now I only clocked it on social media, I may have got this wrong, but I think I'm right in saying Sweden is just starting a program offering people or toying with the idea of repatriating people who are not doing a great job of integration. You may want to Google and check that first. But I think countries in Western Europe are beginning to think along these lines.
Wow. Yeah, I just saw an AP News article here.
Yeah. Sweden will offer migrants $34,000 to go home. Now, this is very, very new. It's 3 days ago. But clearly, I'm not the only person thinking about this. Now, how do you design a program
Rob,
to do
can you unpack? I want to read this. Can you open it up, please? Just open up that article if you could.
It's a voluntary scheme, it should be pointed out.
So Sweden will offer migrants $34,000, and the government greatly increased a grant to encourage more immigrants to go home. Critics say it sends the wrong message and in any case may not tempt many refugees go lower. Sweden nation, long known for its open arms policy towards migrants, plans to drastically increase its cash offer by 35 times. Holy shit, $34,000. On Thursday, the Scandinavian country's right-wing government announced that it would raise the existing benefit from 10,000 krona, which is about $978 per adult, to 35,000, 350,000, and the reduced red tape involved in applying for the grant and bid to create more awareness about the incentive and attract more takers. The existing benefit includes a cap for 40,000 families, 40,000 krona, or 3717. No cap was announced for the increased grant. The increase, which will take in effect in 2026, goes against the advice of government-appointed inquiry, which said, as a report last month, that prompting reparations would hinder migrants' integration into Swedish society. Potential gains do not appear large enough to justify the risk. Makes sense. The step is one part of a larger shift in policy and rhetoric for Sweden, long known as a refugee. For those fleeing war-torn and strife-ridden countries, it is now among a growing number of European nations embracing a harder stance on immigration amid a rise in right-wing and populist parties. Interesting.
Now, this is the New York Times, so it would be impossible for them to write about this without trying to character assassinate the people doing it.
Then let me read this. Sweden's coalition government is propped up by Sweden's Democrats, a far-right party that won the second highest number of seats in 2022. The party began as a neo-Nazi movement in the 1980s, but rebranded itself as a conservative party with curbing migration at the center of its platform. Reforming Sweden's migration policy was non-negotiable during the coalition talks with interesting. So coalition had more than 250,000 refugees in 2020. The latest year refugee was available. About 70 people applied. So only 70 people have applied, and only one got it. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, 16,000 migrants from Africa, Middle East, Central voluntarily left Sweden without any grant last year. Interesting. It tells you something about how little known this is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is 3 days old, this policy. And
wow.
I think there are going to be issues with implementing it. And I think also you've got to be very careful about unintended consequences. If you're paying people $34,000 to do something, they might take advantage of it in all sorts of ways. But what's interesting about this is it shows that, here is a serious government in Europe, a government that is famous for having been relatively liberal on immigration policy, coming up with a proposal to repatriate people who haven't integrated. Interestingly, yesterday, Germany closed its borders. I don't mean shut as in preventing people from crossing them, but the open border policy that allowed people to come in from across Europe, that has now gone. One of the key tenets of European integration, the idea that borders weren't needed and that anyone could cross over, that's now gone. Germany is now scrutinizing people coming into Germany. Again, I think this is telling. This is a beginning of a trend. The people who run Western European countries are starting to recognize that they're going to have to change a lot of long-standing assumptions about the ability of people to move freely around Western Europe and to come into Western Europe.
Look, I made a video, Rob, I made a video 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and I said, if you hate America, if it's terrible, if I was a politician, I'd give you $100,000 to leave America and give up your passport and your citizenship. Get out of here. Go anywhere else you want to go to. You don't need to be here.
And there are so many people around the world who would make brilliant Americans. I felt when I came to America that I was coming home. Even though I hadn't come here, I felt I was always born to be in America, destined to be in America. There are so many people like that around the world who would make great Americans. Look at all those people from India coming here, working incredibly hard.
They love it here.
They love it here.
Oh my God, they love it here. They're net positive to society.
They're huge high achievers.
Right, they are.
Look at the guy who put people up in outer space yesterday. He came here from South Africa. Look at the guys who founded Google and the big tech companies. They came from, I think some of them came from Ukraine. People come from all around the world to make a contribution.
Yeah.
America can choose the brightest and the best. We should do so.
I think so as well. If you're Goldman Sachs, you should keep hiring the best. You're Goldman Sachs. If you're Elon Musk, you should hire the best.
Hi, everyone. I'm Douglas Carswell. You can join me on Minect, where you can ask me any question you want. Why I believe in American exceptionalism. What made me leave Brexit Britain and come to Mississippi, the greatest state, I think, in America. You can ask me any question you want, and I'll answer it directly. Look forward to hearing from you.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.